Chapter 21. Kira's briefing with the team. The briefing room was dim, with only the glow of the holographic map illuminating the faces of the team. Kira stood at the central console, her fingers gliding over the controls as she manipulated the hologram of Atlantis. The city's concentric rings rotated slowly, shimmering in fractured blue light, highlighting the ruins that stretched across its vast layout. Miles stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, his sharp gaze fixed on the display. The rest of the team sat silently, their attention on Kira as she began her explanation. "Here's what we've uncovered," Kira started, her voice steady and professional. She gestured toward the outer rings of the hologram. Atlantis didn't fall all at once. It was a series of catastrophic events, each compounding the last. The hologram shifted to a simulation. Glowing arcs of energy appeared above the city, illustrating the Metromite-powered shield. 150 years ago, a massive solar flare struck Earth. The energy from the flare overwhelmed Atlantis' shield, this protective barrier you see here. It was their first and only line of defense, and it failed almost immediately. She zoomed in on one of the outer pyramids, showing its intricate network of Metromite veins glowing faintly. These pyramids acted as energy collectors, channeling Metromite to power the shield and the city's infrastructure. When the flare hit, that energy surge overloaded their systems, frying the conduits and rendering the shield useless. The entire network collapsed within hours. Miles nodded, his expression hardening. "And without the shield?" Kira tapped the console, and the hologram expanded to show the Earth's atmosphere. A glowing representation of the magnetosphere appeared, pulsating weakly. The solar flare didn't just destroy Atlantis' defenses, it disrupted Earth's magnetosphere. For several years, the planet lost its ability to deflect solar radiation. This caused extreme atmospheric heating, rapid polar ice melt, and a sudden rise in sea levels. The hologram shifted again, showing a simulation of Atlantis as the water rushed in. The outer rings were submerged first, followed by the inner rings. Waves swept over the grand buildings, dragging debris into the depths. Within days, Kira continued, Atlantis was completely underwater. The very energy source that made them powerful, the Metromite, became their downfall. Their entire infrastructure was dependent on it, and when it failed, they had no way to adapt. She paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in, then fast-forwarded the timeline. The water levels receded slowly over the course of the next 5 years. The city re-emerged, but the hologram now showed ruins, shattered pyramids, crumbled domes, and fractured Metromite veins flickering weakly. When the magnetosphere stabilized, the oceans receded, revealing what we see today, Kira said, her voice dropping slightly. But by then, it was too late. The city's structures were eroded, and the population, if they hadn't already fled, didn't survive. The remnants of the Metromite network still pulse faintly, but the damage is irreversible. Miles stepped closer to the hologram, studying the ruined pyramids and the faint, broken light still emanating from the inner rings. So they relied on Metromite for everything: shields, energy, even basic infrastructure. One flare and it all came crashing down. Kira nodded. Exactly! Their advancements were incredible, but their dependency on Metromite made them vulnerable. When the solar flare hit, it wasn't just a disaster, it was an extinction event for Atlantis. Miles straightened, his jaw tight. Good work, Kira. This explains a lot about the ruins and why the energy is still active in some areas. Let's make sure the rest of the team understands this during the full briefing. Kira gave a curt nod, closing the hologram. Understood. I'll have the visuals ready to present. Jace leaned back in his chair, smirking. You know, we're no different than them. Take away the internet and all the high-tech gadgets we're glued to back home and we'd fall just like Atlantis. One big solar flare and boom, welcome to the Stone Age. The team chuckled, though Miles's expression remained serious. He crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on the hologram. The last ice age wiped out entire civilizations. What happened to Atlantis isn't some myth, it's a warning. Kira, tell us about the cataclysm coming in 3 days. As Kira manipulated the hologram of Atlantis, she stopped to focus on the seismic data, her expression tense. She looked up at Miles and the team. Listen carefully, she said, her voice sharp and clear. Everything will seem normal until the earthquake starts. That's the deceptive part. The surface will stay calm and we might not notice anything unusual. No tremors, no signs, right up until the plates shift. When it hits, it's going to be catastrophic. The hologram shifted, showing an overlay of seismic pressure building beneath the ruins. Kira highlighted the fault lines directly under Atlantis. This is what we're dealing with. The pressure down here is off the charts. Once it releases, we'll see a chain reaction. Massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions beneath the city, and tsunamis radiating outward. Nothing will survive. Not the ruins, not us. The hologram zoomed out, showing a simulation of the tsunamis forming and sweeping across Atlantis, drowning everything in their path. Kira's tone grew more urgent. We've got 3 days before this happens. If we don't make the jump before the cataclysm, we'll become part of the ruins. Ancient history, just like Atlantis. Miles leaned closer to the display, his voice calm but firm. What about the anchor point? Can we still make it back safely? Kira nodded, pointing to a glowing marker on the hologram. The anchor point is intact. It's unaffected by the seismic activity for now, but once the quake starts, all bets are off. We have to initiate the jump before the first waves hit, or we're not getting out alive. Lena furrowed her brow, leaning forward. What if the anchor point destabilizes early? Could the volcanic activity interfere with it? Kira met her gaze, her tone measured but confident. The anchor point is tied to a fixed temporal lock, independent of the physical environment. As long as we initiate the jump before the quake peaks, we'll be fine. But the margin for error is razor thin. We can't afford any delays. The room fell silent as the weight of Kira's explanation settled over the team. The hologram flickered with the simulated destruction of Atlantis, a stark reminder of what awaited them if they failed to act in time. Miles leaned forward, arms crossed. All right, let's settle this. How the hell does an entire city float? Kira tapped the hologram, activating a rotating schematic of Atlantis. It's not magic, it's physics engineered to perfection. Atlantis stays afloat using 4 interdependent systems, all powered by Metromite. First, it uses gravitational repulsion. Metromite generates an inverse gravitational field that counteracts Earth's pull. Instead of resting on water, Atlantis is repelled from the planet's core, like 2 magnets with the same poles pushing against each other. Second, electromagnetic stabilization keeps it balanced. Floating isn't enough. You need stability. Atlantis locks onto Earth's magnetic field and self-adjusts in real time to counter ocean currents, wind, and seismic shifts. If the city tilts, Metromite redistributes energy instantly to level it out. Third, atmospheric buoyancy fine-tunes its altitude. Beneath the city, sealed chambers regulate pressure, like a submarine controlling depth. These chambers expand or contract to ensure Atlantis stays at a consistent elevation above the ocean. Fourth, energy redistribution acts as the city's safety net. It runs on a smart power grid that monitors stress points and reroutes energy as needed. If one section weakens, another supplies additional power to maintain equilibrium. It's a self-correcting system designed for continuous operation. And finally, the shield. Atlantis is encased in an adaptive energy barrier powered by Metromite. It absorbs and dissipates the force of tsunamis, massive waves, and extreme weather conditions, preventing catastrophic damage. Think of it like an invisible force field, one that not only protects the city but stabilizes its environment, keeping the waters around it calm no matter how violent the ocean gets. Jace raised a hand, shaking his head. Okay, stop. Now say it again, but in English. Kira exhaled, smirking. Fine. Think of it this way. Metromite keeps Atlantis floating, the magnetic field keeps it from wobbling, air pockets adjust its height, and the energy grid makes sure it doesn't flip over. Jace squinted, shaking his head. Still not getting it. Stop speaking physics and start speaking Jace. Kira rolled her eyes. All right, picture a gyroscope. She gestured with her hands. When it spins, it stays balanced no matter how you tilt it. That's what the magnetic field does, keeps Atlantis steady even when the ocean moves beneath it. Jace's eyebrows lifted. Oh, so it's like image stabilization in cameras, always keeping the shot steady no matter how much you move? Kira smirked. Exactly, except instead of keeping your vacation videos smooth, it's keeping an entire city from face planting into the ocean. Jace leaned back, nodding. So basically, it's like a waiter weaving through a restaurant with a tray full of champagne flutes, and somehow nothing spills. Kira smirked. Exactly. Except if one thing fails, the tray doesn't just wobble. The whole damn restaurant goes under. Theo exhaled, shaking his head in disbelief. Wow. They didn't just build a city, they engineered a fortress against nature itself. Miles turned to Theo, who stood next to a large hologram of Atlantean glyphs projected above the console. The vibrant, water-like designs shimmered, their colorful, geometric shapes radiating a mysterious allure. Theo, what can you tell us about the Atlantean language? Miles asked, folding his arms. Theo adjusted his glasses and stepped closer to the hologram, his enthusiasm evident. The Atlantean people created a language that's as much art as it is communication. These glyphs are unique, wavy, water-like patterns mixed with geometric shapes like circles and spirals. They're vibrant and almost alive in their design, almost as if the writing itself flows like water. Aina and I have been running translation algorithms using linguistic modeling and comparative syntax analysis. Theo gestured to one of the glyphs on the hologram, highlighting it with a glowing marker. For example, this glyph here, found in what we think is an auditorium, translates to gathering place. Over here, he pointed to another image pulled from drone footage. This glyph was found on a broken stone plaque near what appears to be a recreational area. It contains safety rules, possibly for a park or public space. But this one, Theo's voice grew more animated as he zoomed into another symbol, was found inside the main temple ruins. It translates to Archives Library. It's a direct reference to what might be their central hub of knowledge. Miles raised an eyebrow. So Aina can now translate these visual writings in real time? Theo hesitated, then shrugged slightly. It's not perfect yet. What I've shown you so far is an educated guess based on limited data. Aina's algorithms are improving, but we still need more glyphs to refine the translations. Right now, there's a lot we don't know, syntax, context, and deeper meanings. He glanced at Miles, his tone becoming more insistent. If we want real answers about their language, their history, everything, we need to get to the Archives Library. That place might hold the key to understanding it all. Jace chimed in, leaning forward with a sly grin. And here's something even more fascinating. On the interior walls of the ruined buildings, the glyphs and holographic art depict the Atlanteans as being incredibly tall, between 6 feet 2 inches and 7 feet 4 inches in height. Their life expectancy was around 120 years, and their diet was remarkably healthy. Greens, fruits, grains, fish, you name it. But here's the kicker, he added, pointing at the glowing glyphs. Metramite didn't just power their tech, it enhanced their cognitive abilities. Aina's data shows that prolonged exposure to Metramite's energy increased their reasoning intelligence and even creativity. Miles's expression shifted to one of deep thought. So the culture we're marveling at wasn't just advanced, it was fueled by their own environment and the effects of Metramite. Jace nodded. Exactly, their intelligence and creativity, their art, language, everything was amplified by this energy. It's no wonder they achieved so much. Miles turned to Lena. Lena, what's your update? Lena tapped her console and the hologram shifted to show an energy map of the ruined temple. The Metramite core crystal is still active, she explained, highlighting a glowing point deep underground. It's leading us to a subterranean chamber beneath the main temple. We need to go there and take a closer look. The energy output is off the charts. It's more advanced than electricity as we know it. She zoomed in further, pointing to glowing lines spreading out from the core. Their energy system works differently. It's conducted through the air, not just physical conduits. They had energy storage containers scattered throughout the island. Think of them as the equivalent of transformers in our world. This grid transmitted energy wirelessly to power everything, from their homes to their massive shield. Her tone grew more serious. If we can fully understand and harness this Metramite technology, it would change everything. Our world would never be the same. Jace leaned back with a sly grin, tapping the table. So, let me get this straight. These guys had wireless energy flowing through the air, no need for cables, plugs, or batteries. Meanwhile, I'm back home fighting my charger every night like it's my mortal enemy. I swear, Metramite could have saved me years of frustration. He paused, then added with a smirk. Honestly, I'm starting to think Atlantis fell because they had too much free time without cords to untangle. The team burst into laughter, the kind that broke through the tension of the moment. Even Miles shook his head, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "All right, Jace," Miles said, his tone carrying a hint of amusement. "If you're done solving the mysteries of Atlantis with your charger woes, let's focus on the mission. We've got bigger problems to untangle." Theo furrowed his brows, staring at the holographic model of Atlantis. Okay, but why build the entire city in the middle of the ocean? They could have built it on land and avoided half these engineering nightmares. Lena, already scanning the Metromite energy flow on her tablet, barely looked up. Because Metromite doesn't just generate power, it interacts with the ocean itself. Water isn't just a setting for Atlantis, it's the key to its survival. She expanded the display, highlighting blue energy conduits stretching into the surrounding waters. Metromite's energy field relies on the high conductivity of seawater to function at full efficiency. The ocean acts as both a stabilizer and a distribution system, allowing energy to flow in controlled currents throughout the city. On land, Metromite would lose its efficiency, its energy dispersing unevenly instead of circulating properly. She zoomed in on a section of the city where glowing Metromite veins pulsed beneath the ocean floor. It's more than just conductivity. The constant movement of the tides helps regulate excess energy, preventing dangerous buildups. Atlantis doesn't just float, it integrates with the surrounding waters to stay powered and balanced. Without the ocean, Metromite can't sustain large-scale infrastructure. If they'd built it on land, the entire system would have collapsed under its own instability. Theo sat back, rubbing his chin. So basically, Atlantis isn't just sitting in the ocean, it's part of it. The water isn't an obstacle, it's what makes the whole system possible. Lena nodded. Exactly. They didn't just build a city, they created a living, breathing energy network that only works in the ocean. Without it, Metromite wouldn't function properly, and Atlantis would have never existed. Jace smirked, leaning back in his chair. So you're telling me Atlantis is basically the world's most expensive houseboat? Lena sighed, but a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. If that helps you understand it, sure. Miles leaned in, his gaze fixed on the holographic display of the Metromite core pulsing beneath Atlantis. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. This isn't just some lost relic we're uncovering. His voice was quieter now, more measured. If Kronos gets its hands on this, everything changes? The room stilled. Lena, who had been analyzing the Metromite energy flows, nodded. Unlimited power, no emissions, no reliance on fossil fuels. If we can reverse engineer it, we wouldn't just be talking about free energy, we'd be talking about rewriting civilization. Miles tapped the console, watching the glowing pathways flicker across the ruins. No more wars over oil, no more energy shortages, no more monopolies dictating the price of keeping the lights on. He shook his head. Governments, corporations, everyone who built their empire on energy control, they'd either have to adapt or collapse. Jace let out a low whistle. And by adapt, you mean fight to keep it buried? Miles smirked grimly. Exactly. He gestured toward the screen. We're staring at the single most valuable energy source in human history. The question isn't just whether we can retrieve it, it's whether the world is ready for it. Miles took a deep breath, straightened, and addressed the team. Good work, everyone. Kira, you're staying aboard the sphere. Guide us as we navigate the city and keep an eye on threats. Miles glanced at the team. All right, team, get suited up. Let's get some fresh air and see what else this place has to show us. A chorus of voices replied in unison. Aye, aye, Captain! The team dispersed, energized and ready for the next phase of their mission. Miles lingered for a moment, staring at the hologram of the glowing Metromite core deep within the temple ruins. This place holds more than we could have imagined, he murmured to himself before turning to join the others.